But this is on a scale that we're not, this is, we're talking about trees that are 6, 8, 10 miles in diameter, right? Imagine how big the chunks of a tree like that are going to be when they break down.
Wow.
So,
It's
so his
remarkable.
work is essential. Now, extrapolate forward. If the great trees were a real thing, great fauna and flora, right? Then the great animals were probably also a thing. Now, we're already told this by the mainstream, narrative to some degree, but I believe that the Titans were very much a real thing. Yeah, and that's what I alluded to a moment ago. I might have thought it and not said it, but I was talking about mining, and that I think ultimately we are being farmed and we're being mined, and so the resources and this is where when you get into Tartaria and you get into mud floods and you get into the great architecture and the star forts and all these things, and you realize that all this stuff is linked with underground tunnels, and the tunnel systems are on a scale that you can't even begin to imagine. And that's when you start to realize that there's so much more going on here than we were ever taught to believe, and we're so busy looking out to space thinking that's where our future is and we better get off this rock before we get hit by a rock. And so people are not looking down. They're not looking underground. They're not looking in the oceans. There's so much. And yeah, it's fun. It's fascinating, and you have to take everything with a grain of salt. You be a selective sifter, You can't just buy every theory you come across.
But the finding of a prehistoric skeleton in the Grand Canyon of the Colorado would, if authenticated, overthrow all the arguments of the scientist 40 miles from Flagstaff, Arizona. Hull, the guide, has unearthed the petrified skeleton of a man who he estimated to have been at least 17 feet high. See that?
Yeah. The thing is,
17 feet high. What's up, guys? Michael James with Beyond the Forbidden. If you want to receive extra content that's not viewed anywhere else, support Beyond the Forbidden on Patreon to receive plus content that is only exclusive to members of Beyond the Forbidden. Content like the full 2-hour podcast, bonus shows, full-length video interviews, behind-the-scenes footage with guests, and much more. So what do you have to lose? Go to patreon.com/Beyond the Forbidden. That's patreon.com/Beyond the Forbidden and become a member of Beyond the Forbidden for just $5 a month. And also check the description for the links. All right, welcome to Beyond the Forbidden. Today on the show, I got Mike Wilkerson. Man, he kind of has a cult following. If you're in the know, you know about Mike Wilkerson. And man, in the small circles, I say small circles, but you're making your rounds with a lot of podcasts on YouTube, on podcast only, like Veritas Radio. It's only a matter of time till you just get out there. Your work is phenomenal. Welcome to Beyond Forbidden. How the hell you doing, man?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Pleasure to be here.
So there's many topics that I want to cover today. But I guess for the ones that may not know who you are, I guess give us just the brief rundown on Mike Wilkerson and how you got interested in these topics that we're going to be talking about tonight.
Which topics?
Well, you talk about a lot. The petrogenesis, biogeology, and man, all kind of stuff. You cover a lot of things on your channel. Oh, also, everybody check out, and it will be in the description also, Stellium 7, STELLIUM 7. Stellium 7, that is his YouTube channel. Check it out. It'll be in the description. But yeah, how'd you get interested in all this stuff, Mike?
Yeah, well, everything you just mentioned is all part of what's on my YouTube channel. And that started at, I don't know, time is a weird thing nowadays, but I think it's somewhere about between 4 or 5 years ago. It all started with a friend of mine who got me looking into all kinds of things that I hadn't really given any credence to. I've been, the quote unquote conspiracy theorist for many, many years. My dad gave me Behold a Pale Horse when I was 21. So that's going on 34 years ago that I first read that book. And that Got it right there.
Right there. Behold a pale horse,
The
baby.
new I ordered it recently because I hadn't read it in years, and the new version is missing a chapter. Did you know that? I don't know how new that one is.
Don't know that. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars isn't in the version I have, which I think is a very interesting one to leave out since it's
Go,
so pertinent to our current
yeah, go
current
ahead
state of the world.
I guess still explain your background, and I'll look for that because I've had this one for a while, so surely it's in here.
Yeah, so that got me looking at the world from a different, angle, and became aware of different secret
Chapter
societies.
one.
And
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's chapter one. Silent Weapons for
oh, is
Quiet
it?
Wars. Yeah,
All
chapter
right.
one.
Oh, it's okay. I don't know. Have you had that for a while?
Oh
The
yeah.
one I have doesn't have it.
No, I've
But
had that one for a while.
yeah.
I try to keep it in mint condition. Like I don't fold my books. Like I try to like this, like because I'm not going to fold the thing
Wear gloves.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm going to quit interrupting you. I'm just freaking stoked to have you on the show, man. Go ahead.
That's all right. Yeah. So so I went down that whole path for a lot of years and looked into lots of different topics that were anything but mainstream. And then somewhere along the line, I decided that I didn't want to go down the hide in the hills and become a prepper and collect guns route, and I wasn't going to let fear rule my life. And decided that so much of it was like above my ability to affect. So I just went back to learning and taught myself all kinds of different things along the way. I was a body worker in California, where I grew up for a number of years. I did massage, and then years later, I went back to it and studied to become a chiropractor. I've been a chiropractor for 15 years now, and have traveled a lot. I live in Spain currently. I lived in Italy for a few years. I went initially as an exchange student. That's how I ended up in Europe. I've been here for the last 25 years. And so started a family, a couple of kids that are now almost fully grown. So a lot of different chapters in my life along the way. But it's really the last 4 years that have been, in many ways, the most interesting because of the alternative research that I got into. So my friend, Alex Michael, who's also known as the conspiracy music guru. If people are not familiar with his work, I highly recommend you check it out. His music videos are the best out there when it comes to truth bombs and, just toe tapping awesome stuff. And the videos are well edited, and they're fun to watch, and they're just filled with loads and loads of good information. So he and I were just comparing notes and checking off the boxes of all the different kinds of things that we'd looked into and decided were bullshit, If you come, sorry, I don't know if I can say that in the first
go
hour.
ahead. Go ahead.
BS. And
just try not to say the F-bombs during the first
and
hour.
then at one point he started asking me if I had looked into Earth shape at all, specifically talking about flat Earth, and I just immediately just thought, oh my God, he just went there. How can you be so smart about all this other stuff and so dumb about that? And that was long before I realized how truly deep a topic Earth shape is. And I think the whole ball versus flat is just a false dichotomy that's there to get people fighting amongst each other. And that the truth about our realm is way more profound. And whether it's hollow Earth or whether it's flat or whether it's a toroid, it doesn't matter to me. But it's a very interesting thing, because when you start to go into it and you start to look at the actual empirical evidence that we've been given, you find out that there is no empirical evidence for what NASA is showing us, and that may be controversial to a lot of your subscribers, because you cover a lot of alien kind of stuff. I don't know where you've gone. I haven't had a chance to review your videos.
Well,
yet,
if you listen to my podcast only, I put an intro in there, Uh, coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere in the northern hemisphere. It's an intro. It's a professional intro. Coming to you
Hmm.
from an undisclosed location somewhere in the northern hemisphere, waiting out the alien apocalypse. He is armed with a machete and a microphone. Uh, and then it goes on to say, some join Michael James as he seeks answers to the paranormal, conspiracies, ancient mysteries, and the occult. It's a
Hmm.
pretty sweet intro. I've had it for a couple years, but yeah, those four: paranormal, which aliens, UFOs, conspiracies, ancient mysteries, and the occult. That's but
Well,
you're not going to see a whole lot of dark conspiracies and stuff on YouTube channel. But a lot of the podcast, and especially the members of Beyond the Forbidden that become Patreon, and I will soon. I got my website, but I'll soon have my website where people can subscribe also. But yeah, go ahead, man.
yeah. Well, when I started looking into these things that I thought were batshit crazy, and I figured it would take me, well, he had to bring it up two or three times before I even gave it the time of day, and I figured it would take me 5 or 10 minutes to debunk, because even though I was kind of wise to the idea that the moon landings were hoaxed, and maybe Kubrick was behind them and all that kind of stuff, and the lunar lander looked like it was made by children on drugs. Um, it never occurred to me that they might have been faking everything since. Now, obviously, I know that there's probably some kind of a secret space program, and maybe it's not, unlike what they show us in something like Men in Black, where there's, underground bases everywhere, and who knows what's really going on. Um, but it never occurred to me that the ISS was faked, or that satellites didn't exist the way we're taught they exist, and that sort of thing. So one by one, everything I brought him just got shot down. And the more I looked for some really solid evidence to counter this stupid idea, the more difficult it became. And so that started to, I call it the skeleton key of conspiracy theories, because regardless of whether it's a ball or flat or what, as you start to look into it, it opens up and connects so many different rabbit holes that don't seem initially connected, and it really starts to help people put together more of a tapestry of what's really going on when it comes to deception and the ways that we're being lied to. And I think that's one of the reasons it's so heavily censored, because it's one of those things that wakes people up to the fact that, wow, maybe everything is a lie. And or just about everything, or
Mm-hmm.
it's an inversion, or it's a distortion, or but everything should be looked at with new eyes and examined, because we shouldn't take anything at face value. And
What do you think the
like
Earth is? Well, if I know we don't know 100%, but what does your gut tell you? If you
well
what side of the fence are you leaning towards a little bit more as of right now?
well I mean, if you want to go really deep, I think that we live in some kind of a cymatic utterance of the Godhead, and it probably takes the shape of a toroid ultimately, because that seems to be the universal shape that exists throughout nature. A lot of people think it's the sphere, and they were given this atomic theory, and their little balls, that all fit together and bounce around. But when you really start to look at the empirical evidence that's there, and the different kinds of experiments that can be performed, whether you're looking at plasma physics, whether you're looking at biology, whether you're looking at the way plants grow, everything is following these same patterns. And so, yeah, my take is that we're probably inside of some kind of a toroid, possibly on an accretion disk. The North Pole very likely being some sort of a singularity that powers the whole thing, and probably oscillates, but in timeframes that we don't perceive, because it happens over such long periods of time. Maybe it expands, maybe it grows. I don't know. Maybe there's outer lands. I don't really care what shape it is. Ultimately, I'm more interested in discerning what is truth, and And the best way to do that is by eliminating the lies.
Mm-hmm.
Because
It's hard though.
it's very hard to prove things, but when you can, it's a lot easier to disprove things than it is to prove them. So
But then
I
again,
kind of,
you had to have some kind of ground, some kind of structure in place to disprove. What kind of structure would you go by that you would disprove something? Would it be modern mainstream academia to disprove things? But I don't believe
well,
mainstream
I
academia.
would say the best way to start is with empirical reality, right? And
Mm-hmm.
not get lost in theory tales, but
Yeah.
to actually look at what's going on around you. What are we told? What are we taught? And can you verify that for yourself? And so much of what we're taught, like we're told it's a ball. How do we know it's a ball? We'll look up at the moon. It's a ball. Look up at the sun. It's a ball. Look up at the stars. They're all little mini balls that are really far away. And we're told that by liars who are easily
Yeah.
proven liars. And
Yeah.
there's so many, I could go on and on about different examples of the different, things with NASA that are, it's such a joke, and it's hard to believe that people buy it, but we're paradigm blind, all of us. It's a phrase that I
I like
coined
that. I
because
like that.
because we grow up in a certain belief structure, and so you can't see outside of the belief structure because that's the water you're swimming around in. It's like, is a fish even aware that they're in water? It's just their reality. So from the time we're little children, we're being bombarded with all kinds of indoctrination on every level, not just about earth shape, about health, about you name it. And so the yeah, it's
Well, I like that.
yeah.
I like that. And I like having just a casual conversation. You know what I mean? Where the conversation goes, it goes. Where it ends, it ends. But and I'm already digging this interview, but I'm going to use that in the title, paradigm blindness or paradigm blind. And I like that. I like how you coined that because we are talking about that because that's not going to be the only thing in the interview, the title of the interview, but that's going to go within it, I'm sure, because you're right. We are all blinded by this bullshit reality or this bullshit paradigm, this artificial paradigm. You know what I mean? Um, this artificial construct that we live in. And back to the flat earth, I don't know. I would like to say I'm right on. You can't be in the middle. I don't
Mm.
I don't know because a lot of flat earthers, I'm
See,
not a
that's a foolish statement. That's the statement of somebody who doesn't know the arguments.
yeah,
And most
no.
of those people who will say those kinds of things don't know crap about the heliocentric model either.
Mm-hmm.
The people who are the most boisterous and when it comes to insulting the flat earthers, they don't even know the first things about the reality that they live in, or the reality we're told we live in, right?
Mm-hmm.
You ask them, what's the circumference of the earth? How fast is it spinning at the equator? How fast is it spinning halfway up between the equator and the North Pole?
How far are we
How
away from the sun,
fast
the
does it go
moon?
around the sun? How far are we from the sun? How big is the sun? How big is the moon? Why are they the same size in the sky if they're so different in size? There's all these questions. Why do we not perceive movement if we're spinning,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I
why
know.
can we why can we see too far? Why have our optics outgrown the illusions that we've been fed? I don't know about you, how old you are, but when I went to school,
36.
36, I'm
About to be
55.
37 next month.
So when I went to school, we were taught, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, and he was so brave because he wasn't worried about falling off the edge of the earth, right? Like all those superstitious, stupid ancients believed that there was an end, and if you kept going, you were going to go off of it, and there were probably big, monsters there that would eat up your boat or whatever, right? And so those were the pictures in my school books. But Columbus, the great savior, he knew that it was a ball, and he knew that because the boats disappear over the horizon bottom first, right? Right? It makes sense. It's going
Yeah,
over the ball,
yeah,
it's going to disappear bottom first, right?
yeah.
That's not what happens at all. That's a function of optics. And if you don't understand, the way optics function and perspective and all the things like atmospheric occlusion, why mirages happen, those kinds of things, you can't understand why the boat disappears bottom first. But it doesn't matter, because I could pull up a video, it's a 30-second video, P900 camera. Now there's a P1000. The P900 had something like an 85x zoom, and the P1000 125x. And you can look at an empty horizon and zoom in and pull a boat back from behind the horizon. So does that mean that we're seeing around corners? I don't think that's how it works, right? Yes, light can bend as it goes from one medium into a denser medium. It's going to bend in a particular direction, but it doesn't mean that we're able to see around a corner with a powerful zoom. That's ridiculous, right?
And
That's
also
not how we're told light travels in a straight line.
and also Chicago, where you're not supposed to be able to see that.
One of my good friends is a guy, his name is Rick Hummer, and he and Rob Skiba, they, the whole,
Rob died.
Yeah, it's tragic.
Sad, man. Sad. I just emailed him, try to get him on the interview. We're trying to get one going, and something I forgot about the email because been busy. Me and my wife, we just had our first child, but before that, while he was still alive, we were in the process of doing all this stuff. We did IVF, and somehow I forgot to email him back. Right? I hate that, man. And then a couple months passed, and I hear that of his passing. I'm like, why didn't I get to talk to him before?
Yeah,
I don't know. But anyways, tragic. Yeah. But
I had the opportunity to meet him in Denver back in 2018, and really wonderful man, very kind. Just like after just a very short conversation with me, gave me his phone number. Like most people in these kinds of communities are like, I got to get to know you first. Yeah. And he was just like, he was totally out there and open with everything. I first came across his work because he was doing high altitude balloon launches. And, this is another one. If you go up on a ball, the horizon should fall down, right? The higher up you go. Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson tells us that you're not going to see any curvature. You have to get up to above 120,000 feet just to perceive curve. Okay. Well, it's still, the horizon should still drop as you're going up, right? But for some reason, whenever we see something from NASA, it's always, exceedingly curved because they're using fisheye lenses. So what happens if you use a rectilinear lens, which is a lens that you can't remove barrel distortion entirely, but you can get very close to no distortion with the rectilinear lens. So Rob Skiba, he had like a 2-part video series where they had a whole team of guys that were sending up these balloons, weather balloons with these cameras. They had GPSs and everything. They had to do it 2 or 3 times. One of the balloons got lost, but they finally got incredible footage. And just like what's the guy's name? That's they kind of in the Hennessy ad, the like 1800s. He went up and he described the Earth as a like flattened with slightly upturned edges. I can't remember his name.
It's top tip of my tongue. Yeah.
Anyway, so with the rectilinear lens at 120,000 feet, there's no perceivable curvature whatsoever. That's odd. Right. So that was pretty fascinating because I really liked his approach. I thought he was very scientific in the way he was approaching the whole thing. He wasn't just some crackpot that was, looking at these kinds of things and was just willing to believe anything. And then he was good buddies with a friend of mine, Rick Hummer. And when that whole Chicago skyline thing came out, and it's like, what you're seeing here is a mirage. It's like, okay, well, we're seeing Chicago from across, what is it, Lake Michigan? I've never been.
I think it is. I think it is Lake Michigan.
It's like 60 miles. Well, here's the other thing. If it's a ball, and it has a size, you can do geometry on it. It's one of my favorite subjects in high school, geometry, right?
I
We knew
hated
how to
math.
do, all I wasn't a big math fan, but I love geometry. I still don't really think of geometry as math, but to me,
It's all the same to me. I hate it.
But the point is, if the ball is 24,901 miles in circumference, which is what we're told it is, then you should have a certain amount of curvature based on a distance. If you have a ball and you go in a straight line away from the ball in a tangent, then the ball is going to curve down and away from you.
Right.
And the further out you go, the greater that curve gets. So that they tell us it's 8,000 miles in diameter, so that half of that would be 4,000 miles. So if you just drew a square around a circle, the point where the top of the square is meeting the top of, or the middle of the top of the square is meeting the circle,
Yeah.
that's your tangent. And if you went out 4,000 miles, you're going to be at the corner. And then it's a 4,000 mile drop to get to the middle of the next straight line. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Which is when you would contact the Earth again. So the further out you go, the more of a drop you should see. And that's a very simple calculation. There's like 4 or 5 different ways to calculate it. Some of them are very complex mathematically, but the easiest way is to just look at distance squared times 8 inches. And that's going to be accurate to a high degree of accuracy, up to about 1,000 miles. So in other words, 1 mile, 8 inches. 2 miles, distance squared. So now you have to go 2 times 2, that's 4, times 8 inches, 32 inches. And then you divide that by 12 to get your feet, right? So at 3, it's already 9 times 8, that's 72 inches. At 3 miles, there should be 6 foot of drop if the Earth is the size they tell us it is, right?
Yeah.
At 10 miles, you're looking at 67 feet of drop. And at 100 miles, now we get that curve falling away. At 100 miles, we should have 6,700 feet of drop.
Wow.
That's over a mile at 100 miles. There's all kinds of observation. Well, back to the Chicago one, that's 60 miles. They claimed on national TV that it was a mirage because everyone was going, oh, maybe those flat earthers are right? Well, Rob Skiba and Rick Hummer, they went out on a really clear winter's day with optics, and they lined up the optics on the city, and they got on a boat and they filmed the whole journey across. I don't know if they went the whole way, but they showed that you could see it the whole way. It was not a mirage, and it's just they completely debunked that. So, but 60 miles is nothing. There's long distance aerial footage. Like, you can look at the world's records for distance photography, and if you can do the math, you'll realize that shouldn't be possible if the world's what they told us. And then there's a guy named Jay Tolan Media is his channel name, and this guy is a very high level scientist that works for the does something for the military industrial complex. I don't know what, but I think don't quote me on that. But anyway, he's got these really powerful optics, and he's fitted them with infrared lensing. So now you're able to cut through the atmosphere because you're just seeing the heat on the distant objects, and you can see incredibly far. He's got footage that's 500, 700, possibly even up to 1,200 miles. Well, 1,200 miles is already 1/24th of the ball, right?
Yeah.
So if you're seeing that far, it should be well behind the curve. So these are the kinds of things that, like, we see too far. Boats don't disappear over horizons. You can pull them back with long distance optics. There are things called rail guns that the Navy has. They can hit objects 100 miles away.
How's that possible?
Those boats are on the water. So that means they're and then they say, oh, well, they're calculating for Coriolis effect and all these other things. And it's all bullshit when you dig into it, because there's loads of videos that have been done where they pull out all of the military, what do you call them? Their manuals for flight manuals and all these different things. And they're always talking about all of this stuff that we're calculating for is done based on a non-rotating stationary Earth. It's like,
Yep.
why would that be the case if we're on a rotating
There's a
ball
combat
Earth?
leaders field guide.
Yeah.
I,
So
I
so
was
are
also
are the
military.
sharpshooters, calculating for Coriolis effect when they're hitting something that's a mile away at the equator?
Now,
These are the kind, how do periscopes see so far? Yeah, I mean,
I
it
know
goes on and on.
it goes
How
on
does
and on.
how does gas pressure exist next to a vacuum of space without a barrier? It defies the second law of thermodynamics, right? It's like if you have a container with gas on one side separated by a barrier, so there's gas pressure, and you remove the barrier, it's going to diffuse immediately and instantly throughout. That's what gas does, right? So we
Mhm.
have atmospheric pressure, barometric pressure. That's how they measure what's happening with the
Yeah.
weather, pressurized system, and and we're right next to this infinite vacuum of space that's all around the Earth, and it never sucks the atmosphere away. It's like,
It's
how does
too
that
many.
work?
It's too many questions, and I'm glad we're kind of, I would say, briefly talking about flat Earth, or I would say, questioning the globe model, because man, there's just too many questions. I wouldn't say I'm a, a globe head, but I'm not a flat
Hmm.
earther, because when it boils down to it, we know there's too many questions. There's way too many questions, and those questions almost prove that there's something more than just a perfect sphere, like we're been told after, in mainstream media, academia. But the only thing, and I'm amazed by some of the math, the science that a lot of flat earthers bring to the table. I'm amazed. I'm serious. Even just hearing you, you know,
They've debunked the official narrative every which way, and the reason nobody knows about it is because Google kicked in with their algorithms. They went to Congress, and it was all, well, how are we going to fight fake news, and how are we going to fight all of this disinformation that people are spreading, right? And they specifically named flat Earth as something that they were going to crack down on, as an example, and then they took down Alex Jones, and it's like First Amendment out the window, because we got to protect everybody from, I don't know, the First Amendment, it seems, protect them from the Constitution. It's not the America that I grew up in, or what I was proud to be an, American about.
I it pisses
you
me
know
off, man. I told you this show's just about, it's not just about the paranormal, and stuff like that. It's about conspiracies, ancient mysteries. It pisses me off when I hear that, Mike, about they want to. We I don't need the government's protection for shit. I don't need protection. Let me discern. Let me use my own discernment. What is real? What is truth? So you saying that I can't listen to Alex Jones or Flat Earth, that I'm too dumb to make up my own damn mind. You know what I mean?
Well, it's just, yeah, absolutely.
It
And
makes me
and
mad. Like,
isn't it
for my
interesting that of all the
protection, for my
things,
protection.
yeah,
Go
isn't
ahead.
it
I'm sorry.
interesting? Like, I mean, all the alien stuff out there, you know? I mean, when was the last time there was like conclusive, undeniable proof of alien spacecrafts and aliens? It's like I've watched loads and loads of stuff, and it's like always these blurry shots, and
Yeah.
it's always this stuff that could have easily been faked with Hollywood tricks. That's allowed to proliferate by the hundreds of millions of views.
Why is
And
that?
flat
Why
Earth
is that? I
is
understand
so
that.
it's the most heavily censored topic other than health, or certain aspects of, or let's say the opposite of health.
Yeah.
Health with an H spelled HELLTH, right? Because that's the healthcare system, in my opinion, that exists now. I mean, there's some good crisis care out there if someone gets in an accident, but um, yeah. Anyway, that's another controversial topic that'll
I,
get you
I
banned
I'm
very
I'm trying
quickly
to
from the
I'm trying to
interwebs.
find I'm looking through some of my older interview notes on here, because that's one of my questions that I've asked before, or I've had it in my notes to ask. I'm sure I know I've asked it before. Of all the interviews I've done, and you know me. Look, I got an alien. I but but
Yeah,
when
and Behold the Pale Horse was the top book. That's hilarious,
yeah,
actually.
man,
Or no, second. What's that one? What's that little one that was on top? Oh, the one you
this
just pulled down.
oh,
Here.
that's actually a Time magazine from see, I'm an ancient
Oh, there
mysteries
you
guy
go.
too, dude.
There you
I'm
go. Healthcare with an HELL.
look, you have Inky the snake.
Right.
And
Uh,
so are they telling us something about our were we genetically modified in the ancient past? You know what I mean? It's
hmm.
like I'm not just a UFO alien guy, which that's one of my favorite topics. That and deep, really good conspiracies. It's like I love a good conspiracy, but I love my aliens and UFOs too. You know, but
Yeah.
but
Well,
but but,
it's
but
funny.
just let me finish real quick because you
Yeah.
brought up a good point. Even though I'm a UFO and alien guy, you know, but why doesn't that get banned? I know I've asked that in other interviews. Why isn't that getting banned? And I'm see people go to my channel and that's all they see. It's because I don't upload deep dark conspiracies to YouTube. I'm not that dumb. You know what I mean? So they're going to see all that. But why am I allowed to upload all those interviews? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So
Yeah.
I'm not being against it. I'm it.
See,
I
I
even
made a
have a hat.
mistake when,
Believe got Sasquatch, you know, getting sucked up by a UFO. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, but I don't understand
Well,
how
and
come.
you can talk about getting sucked up by a UFO and anal probed all day long, and it's no problem, unless you're too graphic.
Yeah.
Start talking about flat Earth. And if you look at the algorithms, if you look at the first hundreds of videos on YouTube right now, all those supposed flat Earth videos are all mocking it. They're all supposedly debunking it, but it's all straw man attacks. They're not actually going after the real phenomenon. They're not looking at the real evidence, and they're not addressing any of the hardest questions. They're just parrots. They're puppets. Some of them are paid. Some of them are just useful idiots, willful dupes.
I did interview Mark Sargent one time, about five,
Yeah,
6 years
Mark.
ago.
Mark has been putting out stuff for years and years. He's got
Probably
lots of
6 years
great things
ago
to say.
on my
Yeah.
old radio show. But that even like I said, I love conspiracies, the paranormal, you know, aliens, UFOs, ancient mysteries, the occult. But with my, I just don't, like you said, I just don't know why. Is it because
Well,
they're not?
I think it's because it's the skeleton key. Because once you realize the frauds of NASA and other major aspects of deception, that starts to wake people up, and then they start putting pieces together and filling in puzzle bits.
Or is the UFO phenomenon, or is it because it's just and aliens and stuff, extraterrestrials visiting us? Is it, or is it just too unbelievable? It's too unbelievable that it's just
Yeah.
the mainstream looks at it as
Well,
science fiction because they know that people that look into that stuff are not, you know, crackpots.
Yeah. Well, I think see, I threw out the baby with the bathwater when I first came across this whole flat Earth thing, and I started to go, wait a minute, there's way more evidence for this than what I thought was real,
Yeah.
And again, for those listening, I'm not saying it's flat. I don't think it's a disk floating in space. That's mixing models, right? That's what they always want people to believe, that it's like it's a square or it's a pizza out floating in space, but all the other planets are round. That's disingenuous. It's a straw man attack. It's just misrepresenting what no flat earther believes, really. And so when I started to look at the empirical stuff, like I live off the coast of Ibiza here in Spain. It's 60 miles away, 90 kilometers. And at that distance, 200 meters or 200 yards roughly of the bottom of that island should be obscured behind the curve, right? And I went out on a clear winter's day with my phone and took a picture and could see the saddle between two peaks. And that point of that saddle is 200 meters. And I could see the whole thing with my phone. So that means at 60 miles, there's no curve. So that means, okay, we got a flat stretch of water for 60 miles. Well, that means the next 60 miles better have double the curve, or it's not going to be a ball. But we know that that's not how water works anyway. First of all, water doesn't stick to the outside of things, right? it flows down until it meets a container, and then it lays perfectly flat. And that's how we build these incredible buildings, right? We have to have levels which use water in order to make everything flat. So but back to the baby with the bathwater thing is once I started to realize this, I'm like, oh my God, space is fake. It's like there's no aliens. It's like, and Werner von Braun, the founder of NASA, former not sea scientist, on his tombstone, it says Psalms 19:1, which is the heaven declare the glories of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. So that's an interesting thing for the founder of NASA to have on his tombstone,
quote,
right?
ain't it?
And he told apparently his assistant on his deathbed that the final card that the controllers would play would be an alien hoax. So I mean, that's where it all seems to be going. Is that's how you get everyone to unite for the one world government is by having an external threat, and the only way we can survive it is if we all band together. You got that, and you've got climate change. We're going to get hit by an asteroid, or we're going to destroy ourselves because we're killing the rainforest, and so we all need to drive electric cars.
I'm trying to find the book by Mac Tony's Crypto Terrestrials. Nick Redfern gave me that book. I interviewed Nick Redfern in his home there in Arlington, Texas, and he gave me a book. He just loaned it to me. I'm supposed to give it back to him, but can't get a hold of him. But Crypto Terrestrials by Mac Tony's, where to sum it all up, he believes that, I can't find the book, but it's a really small book. He died, Mac Tony's did, very young, like not even 40 years old, I don't think. But they're not coming from out there. They're already here, possibly living within the earth.
There could be civilizations underwater. The earth could be hollow. There's plenty, even if the earth isn't hollow, there are underground tunnel systems everywhere throughout the entire realm that are on a scale that people can't even begin to fathom. I mean, Graham Hancock has been exposing a lot of that to the mainstream. But there's so many other topics to go into, like Tartaria, mud floods, star forts, and there's all this effort to discredit them, or to pick out little tiny bits and pieces of these narratives and throw out everything because, oh, that's not true and that's not true, so it must all be a lie. And all of these things dovetail incredibly well. They shouldn't dovetail so well. It shouldn't be like you can start connecting all these dots and you don't sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist. It actually works really, really well when you start to look at the history, the old maps, what the ancients said, and you start to realize that, well, maybe the whole heliocentric lie and space lies is all about obfuscating our real past. And what's our real past then? I think our real past is the mythology. It's the religious stories that are in all the different religions that flood myths are everywhere. It goes on and on that the ancients all had similar ideas about this place. And when you look at the gods, and maybe we're dealing with fallen angels and stuff from the Bible and all of that, but I don't know, got threads going everywhere, but that ties into my research. It's a nice segue into the whole reason you invited me on in the first place.
And we're about to talk about that for the next hour, a little over an hour. But
sorry to the people who aren't subscribers that we didn't talk about any of my research.
but before we go into your research, and everybody go to Stellium 7, STELLIUM 7 YouTube channel. That is Mike Wilkerson's YouTube channel. It'll be in the link in the description for YouTube, Facebook, podcast only, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble. It'll be in the description. Check it out. You will be mind blown. But before we get into that, the only thing that I can say, because flat earthers believe that they have a lot of great evidence. A lot. You can't dispute it. You can't dispute their math, their science. So with me covering all the kind of genres that I do, conspiracies, ancient mysteries, occult, paranormal, everything, the only thing I can come up with a conclusion, Mike, is that this is an artificial simulated construct. More like, I don't know if it's like the Matrix or a video game or whatever.
Yeah.
This, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
A lot of people come back to that. And
That's the only
yeah,
thing I can think of. And I've had many interviews on that topic. But the only thing is, whenever you think we live in a video game, haha, but that's the only reference we have. It's so much
I have,
bigger
I,
and broader than that, you know. That's so much
I have
bigger.
two thoughts about that, just general thoughts about simulation theory. One is that, the ancients talked about everything being illusion, Maya, the Hindus, the Vedas, the Vedics. And I think ultimately that all of creation is a construct in the mind of God, right? So I'm a creationist. I believe that God exists. I don't adhere to any specific religion.
Mm-hmm.
I think they all contain truth.
Yep.
But I think that that reality, that what exists here, at least for our flesh and blood bodies, I think ultimately we're spiritual beings having a human experience. It sounds
Mm-hmm.
cliche because it's
Mm-hmm.
used so often, but
It's true though.
but we've been fed a false dichotomy between matter and spirit. And spirit is for the realm of the psychics and the psychologists and all that, but that's woo-woo. That's not real science. And then we have empirical science that gives us our things like our mobile phones, and it's indisputable that works, right? That's the real magic, and that's what we were taught, and that's why we're fed Star Wars and Star Trek and all of these different stories, because then we become believers in the church of scientism, and we start to adhere to all kinds of dogmas without even realizing it, because we're blinded by the paradigm that we grow up within. So ultimately, I think that it is a simulation in the mind of God. But even if you want to look at it another way, the Matrix exists regardless of the whole God thing. I believe that the Matrix exists, but I believe it exists as an overlay to our empirical reality, and the primary purpose of it is to deceive us about the nature of who we are, why we're here, what this place is, what it's capable of, and the true nature of our realm. So that's my take on things, is that the matrix also exists. The simulation exists as well, but it exists in our minds because we've been fed so many lies that we're living in illusions, and most people don't even have a clue that that's the case, and they see something like the Matrix in the movie theater and they're like, wow, that was a cool film, but they don't realize they're living in the Matrix, and that almost everything that they've been taught is a lie in one shape or another. And the only way to start to discern the truth is to start to wake up and pay attention and actually look at reality and test it and question the unquestionables, because all those things that you were taught are the stupidest things that you could ever believe, and you should never ever even consider something like that, because you'll be maligned and you'll be made an outcast by your friends and loved ones. Those are the things that you should probably be looking at.
Yeah.
because that's where you're going to have the most to learn. And the ancients, what we called science and spirit, and what I was talking about, that false dichotomy before, they didn't have that. They had alchemy. It was science was intimately intertwined with spirit, and an understanding that we're spiritual beings first and foremost. And we're taught that mind and consciousness comes from matter, but in reality it's the other way around, that consciousness precedes matter. And that's one of the most important things we can learn, and that's what mechanism drums out of us, because we're taught that consciousness is an epiphenomenon of a sufficiently complex machine that it suddenly gave birth to consciousness. So through natural selection and lucky, genetic mutations, we suddenly went from, Rob Skiba used to say, from from goo to you by way of the zoo. And they got everyone believing they came from monkeys. And it's bullshit.
What's up, guys? Michael James with Beyond the Forbidden. Do you want to receive extra content that's not viewed anywhere else? Support Beyond the Forbidden on Patreon to receive plus content that is only exclusive to members of Beyond the Forbidden. Content like the full 2-hour podcast, bonus shows, full-length video interviews, behind-the-scenes footage with guests, and much more. So what do you have to lose? Go to patreon.com/Beyond the Forbidden. That's patreon.com/Beyond the Forbidden and become a member of Beyond the Forbidden for just $5 a month. And also check the description for the links.